Welcome, everyone. The sports writers are here. Phil Stacy, Matt Williams, Salem News, Nick Kukuru, Gloucester Times. And we're here talking North Shore sports, North Shore football for sure. And gentlemen, let's just do a quick little review here. Let's look back a bit and before we look ahead. And Matt, I want to talk to you because you and I were both at the same football game last Friday night, Revere at Peabody. A very emotional night, as I learned with Mikey Mastrocola, their leukemia patient, member of the team, but was there as a kind of a surprise. A lot of people didn't expect him here till later in the year, but very emotional night and a very strong performance by Peabody in their win over Revere, 40-0.
That was great to see them. I think great to see Mikey, that is. And I think if there's anything eye-opening, I think it's not the 40. I think it's the 0, because Peabody's defense last year in their losing streak was definitely a liability. And, they fixed it, but they fixed it against opponents that weren't great, right? And then they have a lot of new starters on the front seven, and they just, they looked better. They tackled better. They were better form in the front seven with a lot of young players that look really pretty good. And, some seniors in the middle. Sam Merrill was a guy that was mentioned as sort of the heartbeat linebacker, calling out the signals and stuff like that. He's next to a sophomore fellow middle linebacker. So he's kind of the elder statesman there, and didn't make a lot of flashy plays, but did the good stuff. I think coming into the season, when you look at the receivers that they have and the quarterback that they have, you figure they were going to score a lot of points, right? I mean, it's not that it's easy to score 40 points, but that's not like such a surprise. But I think when you look at the 0, if they're going to be able to play that kind of defense going forward, it really changes the trajectory that the team might be on. They might be a complete team and not a team that has to go to shootouts and things like that. And that's not to take anything away from the offense, but coming in, we knew what they were going to be, right? And they were going to be able to spread people out, 3 receivers, 4 receivers, and have a hard time covering them. I think going forward, we'll talk a lot about teams aren't going to be able to cover those 4 guys, so they're going to have to rush the passer, right? Are they going to be able to keep the quarterback upright long enough for him to find one of those guys? And so far so good on that front. And I think Revere is definitely rebuilding a little bit, but that's a good program. As we talked about last week, they've won a lot of games lately. I think they coming into the year had won 13 of their last 15 games. So they're usually a tough program that finds ways to keep games close, that has a lot of gritty kids. And so I was surprised that it was as one-sided as it was, as quickly as it was, to be honest with you guys. Even though a lot of times people look at it and say, Revere, but I've been on the sidelines for a lot of games where people say that, and then Revere ends up either winning it or keeping it close somehow. So I really was surprised that the game was really in hand early in the second quarter.
Matt, I talked to Lou Ciccatelli off of our video after we did a very short video with him after the game, the Revere coach, who we talked a lot about last week, actually, in the podcast here. But I don't think he expected that score at all, to be quite honest with you.
We should mention
yeah,
too, just for posterity, that Lou and his program did make a donation to the
yeah.
Mastrocola family before the game to help with the medical costs. So just that's Lou for you, classy all the way. So really a shout out to Lou and the Patriots. They really, we kind of repeat ourselves on that one, but they do everything right over there. He sometimes he gets upset we pick against him in the picks, but he's really a first class guy, and definitely a friend of everybody on the pod here.
Hey, before Phil, Masconomet also donated to this, so the Mastrocola Family Fund as well. So the Masconomet football program. So special thanks to those guys as well. Phil, I'm
It's a
sorry.
great family. I mean, and as I mentioned in my story, one of Mikey's good friends from youth football, Carson Brown, who's the great running back for St. John's Prep. Him and his mom were one of the guys that helped set up the GoFundMe when this all started a few months ago. So it is heartwarming to see programs from all over the North Shore, rivals, so to speak, come together in a situation like this. Because I think we all would say everybody's on the same team when it comes to something like this.
I was going to say, I saw one of the Revere assistant coaches on Saturday, who was talking with him, and he was saying they definitely did not expect what they saw out of Peabody. And as Willie alluded to, not so much offensively, but certainly on the defensive side of the ball, the way they were flying off the snap, disrupting the backfield. Really, a lot of guys swarming, a lot of helmets on the ball. Just really aggressive. And he certainly chalked it up to Mikey coming up early in the game, gave them a real shot of energy. And, it started right off the bat and never really dissipated. So, learning lesson for Revere, they just got to move on from this, chalk it up to, hey, hopefully this is our worst game. This is our first one. We just continue to get better from here. And for Peabody, again, as Willie had mentioned, that's a terrific shot in the arm as far as they knew they could do it offensively. But if you're going to get this kind of production defensively, especially once they get into conference play, that's going to be a real feather in their caps.
Phil, they had quickness, they had strength, and they have that kicking game too. I mean,
Oh yeah, we didn't even mention
Peabody could be a real threat.
43-yard field goal, yeah.
Yeah,
Was
43-yard field goal.
43-yarder, was it?
At least, yeah.
It was right. Have room to spend. It would have been good from 50. I mean, I know it probably sounds stupid, but if you watch if anybody can watch the highlight on Twitter, like he really it may or may not have hooked if it went further, but it boomed way past the track. I mean, he had at least another 10 yards on the kick.
Oh yeah, yeah.
That got me to thinking, we really need to have some kind of list of field goal, longest field goal for each team in the region.
That's a great idea. I mean, so people have asked me, the school record, to my knowledge, is 48 yards. Luke Murdoch, my senior year, kicked a 48-yard field goal against Cambridge. I was there, so that's why I know that. I was told that Marcella, it's not Jake, obviously that's the prep guy. Steve Marcel, I believe, was the kicker in the mid-90s and had a long one too. I don't think it was quite 48. I'm reasonably certain that it was in the Salem News when I was in high school that 48 was the school record, but I wouldn't be surprised if this kid makes that if he gets the opportunity to kick one. The problem is this offense is going to have to stall out around the 25 to get the chance. I mean, the only reason he got the chance on Friday night, and one of our referee friends is going to have to chime in on this to let us know on Twitter too. They threw it. It was the last play of the game. It was about 6 seconds. Last play of the half, rather. The quarterback was rolling around, took probably a little bit too much time, threw a touchdown pass, was wiped out for holding. And even though it was an offensive penalty, there was an untimed down. And after the holding, they moved it back and said, well, let's kick. I mean, why not? And added the points with zeros on the clock. So that was kind of a quirky thing of these federation rules to see an untimed. I thought you only got an untimed down if it was a defensive penalty.
Right.
I thought so too.
Revere was kind of penalized on that for for Peabody holding. I didn't really get that, but I didn't have an opportunity to speak to the officials. We had the Hall of Fame ceremony there at halftime, so I had to run and do that. Otherwise, I would have asked one of my guys, like, hey, what's the deal? Is this like a federation loophole or something? So be interested to hear from our official friends that listen to us on that one.
Just getting back real quick to the field goals, the longest one I can remember, and it's probably 25 years or so ago now, but Sean McLean, Bishop Fenwick, back when they had grass at Donaldson Stadium, kicked, I want to say it was a 51 or 52-yarder, 51-yarder, I want to say.
Wow.
Against maybe Newton South. That's the longest one I remember, but we've had some 40s over the years. I just can't remember another 50-yarder. I mean, I could be mistaken.
But Beverly had that Armando Cuco, right, a few years ago. He was spectacular. And Revere, about 3 or 4 years ago, they had an incredible kicker too. I'm blanking out on his name though, but I mean, he was the real deal too.
Kid Sam Perry for Beverly too, might have.
Yeah.
He must have had a 40.
Beverly had a couple, yeah. Well, I feel like we should bring Nick Kukuru in here, Nick, and share a note or two from the Cape Ann area.
I got no kicking notes because the Gloucester and Manchester Essex all-time field goal record is 3 for both schools, so I have no kicking notes to share there.
Wow, you think you think Gloucester would have some kicker guys,
Yeah.
Especially with the kicking guru on Cape Ann there, Rick Gonsalves.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, he had been working for DiBiaso in previous years. So.
Well, there you go.
And there's a guy that never had a kicker too. That figures, I remember they used to go for 2 all the time, and then one year they had a lineman that was a kicker. I'd never seen that before. A big, gigantic kid.
I've seen that. I've seen that.
Grandson of Lou Groza, maybe.
That could have been.
Other than kicking, Nick, can you share anything with us here?
That was
I
a
mean,
great win for Manchester on opening
yeah,
day. They blew
Yeah.
Ipswich. I was surprised that was as one-sided as it was in the second half.
it was, and I was interested to see their offense too, because last season AJ Palazola just opened up everything for everybody. He had about 800 yards receiving out of there, 1,300 yards passing on the season. So I was interested to see who would kind of pick up the slack, but they kind of used the run game to really soften Ipswich up, and then really hit some deep, not deep plays, but just big plays in the passing game. Brendan Twombly completed 5 passes for 205 yards. He got an 88-yard touchdown. He got a 35-yard touchdown. And they use a bunch of different backs to run the ball. Cameron Hubbard ran the ball well. Henry Otterbein ran and caught the ball and had a pick 6. So yeah, that was a good win for Manchester Essex, because it's usually when they beat Ipswich. I know Ipswich is down, but when they beat Ipswich, that's usually a good sign for things to come for them, because anytime that they can beat a Cal team, that's a good feather in their cap.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then on the other side, I mean, I was impressed. Hamilton Wenham, a lot of toughness there to grind out that 20-12 win over Gloucester. I mean, Gloucester had 71 yards of offense in the second half, and 45 of them were on a Hail Mary heave that was caught at the 12-yard line. So, their defense really turned the tides in the second half. Chris Collins, the linebacker, I think he could play for anybody. He's big and physical, and Russell Caswell, I believe the senior captain, kind of dominated on the defensive line. I was actually impressed with both defensive lines on Saturday. Gloucester looked a lot better up front. They just kind of went stagnant on offense, ran out of gas a bit at the end, where Hamilton Wenham had a little bit more in the tank. And of course, quarterback John Ortell, head coach Tim Fryermuth kind of put the game in his hands in the second half. Gloucester was stopping the run pretty well, and Ortell made a bunch of big completions, even a couple scrambles. So he was kind of their offense, and then their defense took care of the rest.
Maybe one other note from the weekend. I mean, we were talking before we started about some of the lopsided scores and some of the ranked teams, but I'm not surprised St. John's Prep won on Friday against Marshfield, but the margin was pretty staggering for the Prep. I know none of us were at the game, but I don't know if you guys want to comment on that or anything else. Phil?
I mean, it certainly seemed to be. I think they fell behind 8-0 early, and then they rattled off about 48 straight points. And certainly the kind of offense that's capable of doing that. I think maybe we wondered how, the team's new quarterback, Aiden Driscoll, might fare. Transfer student from Austin Prep, came in as a junior, was one of 4 guys in the preseason battling for the job. He got it. A lot of eyes looking on him because, you have Janelle Aguero, you have Stephon Patrick, you have Mason McSweeney, you have Jesse O'Fury, obviously you have Carson Brown in the backfield, but who's going to get the ball to these guys? Well, Driscoll answered those questions with 5 touchdown passes. And, I think Willie and I were discussing after the fact, late Friday night after the games that, and this isn't to disparage Aiden or whatnot, but when you have a cavalcade of offensive talents like that, I'm not so sure it's important who the quarterback is. You want to have somebody there who has some skill and knows how to run the system and all, but it's just a matter of getting those guys the ball and letting them do their things. And having not been there, Gene DePlacido was for us, of course. That was probably Gene's 573rd St. John's Prep football game that she's covered. She said he looked good, calm and confident, especially after the early going. Maybe work out a few kinks early on your first varsity game. But when you get the ball to the playmakers who can not only catch the ball in space but do something with it afterwards, that worked out very well. And defensively, I thought they came to play. And they'll obviously get a huge test this week going up to Lawrence to face Central Catholic. It'll be the first road game for Driscoll and a lot of the other Prep players who'll be starting their first games. Central is coming off of getting hammered at home by Springfield Cathedral 35-0. So they'll be licking their proverbial wounds. Will want to get back into the win column. And so it'll be a great test for St. John's to see how they fare. You pass one test, you go right back into the fire the next week. It's the way they do things at St. John's, and they certainly welcome it. We'll see how it works out.
Well, that brings us to look ahead to this weekend. Guys, anything you guys want to touch on? We mentioned Peabody. I wanted to mention while we were talking about Peabody, they're playing at Classical, a team that had a huge, big win over Lexington as far as margin of victory goes last weekend. So that'll be an interesting matchup in Lynn. Swampscott lost to Norton. They'll be playing Lynn
No,
English.
they lost to
Oh,
Auburn.
Auburn, my
Auburn.
mistake. Yeah. Thank you. I knew when I was spilling out of my mouth that it didn't sound quite right, but thank you, Phil. But they'll be playing Lynn English on Friday night at Manning Field, and so those are just some of the games. Interesting one too. St. Mary's coach Sean Driscoll going down to Winthrop with his Spartans, where he used to coach Winthrop football. So but you guys may have some other games to mention as well, previewing.
Will, you got that doubleheader on Friday night, English classical games?
Yeah, I mean, I'm interested to see what English, what Swampscott looks like. You know, they really played a team Friday night. I had an opportunity to watch the game on tape. After getting back from the game in person, and the team they played Auburn was just a rock'em sock'em robots team. They ran a big giant fullback up the middle quite a lot. Swampscott started the freshman Jack Spear at quarterback. He only threw 7 passes, and I think they had something like 20, maybe 25 plays from scrimmage. That's it. And that's not how Swampscott likes to play. They're a speed team. They like to have a lot of possessions and have a lot of cracks at it. So, that it's going to be interesting to see. I'm sure a lot of people look at it and say, well, freshman quarterback, they didn't score an offensive touchdown. He didn't have great numbers. They must be rebuilding. But I want to see what he can do if he can actually get in a rhythm, right? If a team's not keeping him off the field. I don't think you can really gather too much from the way that game went, just because the Swampscott was just not on the field all that much. They had a 2 long touchdown drive. They were up 7-6 going into the fourth quarter, and 2 long touchdown drives for Auburn, ate up almost the whole fourth quarter. They ate up almost the whole second quarter, and Elijah Burns, their great wideout and kick return man who had the touchdown, made a great tackle near the goal line to run out the first half and keep the lead. So they really just didn't touch the ball. So we're going to have to see. I think, in other words, I think this offense is probably better than it looked once it gets the opportunity to actually get itself in rhythm. So that's really what I'm looking for. With Classical, I want to say it's disappointing that Vaughn O'Leary, Vaughn's son, the great quarterback, is out for a while. I was really looking forward to that. Peabody and Classical had a great game last year in the non-playoffs. It was a real quarterback duel between O'Leary and Lynch, but them laying 36 points on a Middlesex League team like Lexington shows that they have a lot of depth. So I expect that to be a pretty decent game. I'm looking to see how Masco bounces back. I thought that was kind of a really surprising loss to Newburyport for them. So I'm really got my eyes on that one. And I think the only team we haven't touched on, well, 2 teams we haven't touched on, obviously the champs from Marblehead, Ho-Hum, another dominant win for them. And then Essex Tech, shout out to them. Nice win over Lynn Tech. Devin LeBron, the quarterback, doing a good job. Had an opportunity to meet him on Saturday. His uncle, Dave Doom LeBron, went into the Peabody High Hall of Fame. So I don't know, maybe we're going to have to start calling Devin Doom as well. I know he and his family watched the podcast and were really gracious. It was great to get a chance to meet them. So shout out to the Hawks and the LeBron family as well.
Phil, anything you want to add?
For this weekend, I saw Danvers on Friday night against Tewksbury, and Danvers is going through a new offensive change. They got a new offensive coordinator. Of course, Neil Weidman is now helping out over in Danvers. He's hoping Ryan Nolan and his staff. And, Danvers has some skilled players. They've got some good size in the line, too. I think it's a matter of everything kind of coalescing, coming together. And one thing they can't do, I mean, they've got a real nice playmaker in Owen Gasanowski. I think we all know that he's a talented player. When he gets going, he can really motor and can do dangerous things with the football in his hands. But they can't rely solely on him. They're going to have to find a way to get other guys involved in that offense. You don't want a slot receiver being your go-to guy where he's going to be double teamed by the second quarter of every game. Some other guys are going to have to find a way to get worked into the mix and step up when their numbers call, whether it's out of the backfield or in space with the football. So I'm curious to see how they're going to do against Haverhill Thursday night at home. Haverhill is coming off of an opening night win over Beverly that they kind of ground down Beverly and wore them out a little bit. And Danvers got worn down by the fourth quarter on a warm night in their opener against Tewksbury. So looking to see if the Falcons can bounce back Thursday night. Should be a good one Friday night over in Marblehead, where Linfield had a very impressive win over Saugus. I talked to a few guys who worked the game, wearing the black and white stripes when I was at Fenwick on Saturday, and they said Linfield looked very good. Size, speed, some good depth, very good skill players, especially out of the backfield. So that's the kind of challenge Marblehead is looking for, with Marblehead coming off of a 25-6 win over Concord Carlisle, I think it was. So curious to see what kind of challenge Linfield is going to bring to Marblehead. Of course, Marblehead has that current state record 21 game win streak going. And then Saturday late morning, I should say, with Beverly, 11 a.m. start for their home opener at Herd Stadium against North Andover. As I just alluded to, Beverly lost their opener to Haverhill. Panthers certainly want to try to bounce back, even their record up, see what they can do as far as moving the football with Devin Smalls in the backfield. I know the quarterback Wheeler looked pretty good for them so far. They want to try to get the ball to Matt Sopp in space, let some of their playmakers do some things, while also coming up with some big defensive stops. So that's what I'll be looking for this weekend.
And North Andover would be interesting to see how that score plays out with Beverly, because North Andover will host Marblehead in another week out at North Andover,
Yeah,
So,
they did the same thing last year. Beverly played up at North Andover in week 2 and was shut out, I want to say 34-0. And then North Andover went down to Marblehead the following week and were shut out 35-0. So it was quite the parallel there. It'd be interesting to see what happens this time around.
So comparative scores don't matter with Marblehead and whatever. No. They just keep winning. You're right. Okay. Sorry about that. Nick, Gloucester, will they win this weekend? They got Chelsea.
I'd hope so. If they can't beat Chelsea, let's be honest, we really don't need to waste any time talking about them on the podcast if they're going to go 0-2 with a loss to Chelsea. So let's hope that, I hope they win.
Tell us how you really feel.
That's aggressive.
Yeah. Well, they don't got much margin for error with the schedule they're playing, so they got to take care of the weaker teams on there. And Chelsea's one of the weaker teams on their schedule. If they fall to 0-2, they're certainly not going to beat Peabody. So, I don't think they can afford many more losses.
a certain team lost to Chelsea last year and ended up with a winning record, so it can be done. That's Salem. I don't know if we talk much about them. Hey, how about Corey Grant? Four touchdown passes. He was my pick for a household name in the crystal ball. I might be having a good start as far as that goes.
As you were talking, I was just thinking about Salem and their win against Chelsea last week. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. A couple guys had a couple touchdowns, right? Devontae Azuna had 2, and was it Patrick Conister had 2? Rocco Ryan had 1. Salem bust out.
Hey,
let's take Martha's Vineyard this weekend. They got their own home opener at Bertram against the Vineyard. I didn't check to see how Vineyard did this weekend, but God, if you're Salem, you got to be flying high, no pun intended, coming into the home opener and eager to build off of that 39-point opening day win. That's like Salem of yesteryear football. That's terrific.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's just jump to a couple of other sports. Guys, do you have any observations on soccer in the area? Maybe a quick note on soccer to share with us?
Up in my area, Gloucester's off to a 2-0 start in the NEC Lynch. They beat Salem and Saugus, so that's a good start for them in the Lynch division. I think the real test will be when they stop playing crossover games to see, how good they really are. But this is a team that lost a ton of players, so that was good to, see them open up with 2, convincing wins. And Gino Tripoli, who is their junior striker, 5 goals in 2 games. So, he's about 6'2", 6'3", very physical player with some speed to go with it. So it looks like they got somebody there to replace Andrew Coelho in the goal scoring department. So that's a big development for the Fishermen early on.
Matt, Phil?
Great win for the Masco girls. They shut out Danvers 4-0. So I think that was kind of a statement. You didn't expect that. Yeah, maybe expected Masco to win, but not 4-0. Kind of shows who the top dog is right now. And on the boys' side, we believe Marblehead are in their first win over Beverly in almost 20 years on Friday. So shout out to those guys. You can learn more about them in the soccer column, I'm sure, next week when the boys' soccer column debuts by our colleague Nick, who couldn't join us today.
Phil, anything from you on the
I can give you some field hockey notes. We had a couple of coaching milestones since we last talked. The great Linda Rice Collins at Marblehead won her 300th game in her 45th season at Marblehead. I mean, what a run that is! But by winning their season opener over Peabody 2-0, she got win number 300. So congratulations, Linda, classy lady and a great coach. And Mary Beth Mahoney at Bishop Fenwick got half of that, her 150th career win. Also a great accomplishment for her when Fenwick won their second game of the season against Central Catholic last week. So two nice coaching milestones to start the year. And I guess it should be no surprise that, our early season scoring leader, one game in her case, is Maggie Sturgis of Masconomet, the two-time reigning Salem News Field Hockey Player of the Year, opened up the season with 7 goals in a win for new Masco head coach Liz Dean. They beat Saugus, I want to say. No, I'm sorry.
Peabody. It's a lot of goals. I always joke about this, but like I can't imagine. I think if Nicole Woods had shot that much, there would have been riots in the streets. When she was playing. But I was a little surprised by the 7. I mean, that's like a double hat trick. That's remarkable, but that's a lot of shooting.
Right. I mean, think about like if somebody had 7 goals in a hockey game, we'd be like, what? One of those type deals.
Well, it's just why? Like, why? I don't know. I know the game's changed a little bit, but back when Nicole was playing, it was kind of like considered gauche, as they say. Once she got 1 or 2, it was like, you have to stop. You're too good for everyone else. But it's nice that the sport's evolved, I guess, beyond that kind of stuff.
Sure.
A big one too. I'll be at Newell on Tuesday afternoon. Gloucester hosting Masco. So Gloucester's 2-0. They beat 2 of the weaker teams. Who was it? They beat Saugus 10-0. They beat somebody else 5-0. So I mean, they're off to a good start, outscoring 15-0. They think they're back after a down year this year, and they have the chance to prove it against Masco. I mean, Masco's been the top dog in the NEC since they've joined the NEC. So that'll be a good one.
About Danvers baseball. Do we have a note from Danvers baseball, Bill and Matt?
We do, yeah. Will, you want to go ahead with that?
Oh yeah, well, we just have a new head coach, Matt Mello, coming over from Peabody, the longtime assistant coach, JV coach, coaches at Beverly Rex. We talked about him in the summer when they won the North Shore League. So he has been hired as the new coach over in Danvers and is really excited about it. Good guy, really paid his dues. I think is ready for a head coaching gig, and they're excited to add him over there in Danvers. And in 4, 5, 6 months, whatever it is, when we get started, I'm sure we'll talk about him a lot more. But nice little news there on a Friday before football. I don't know if that was like I should have. I didn't get a chance to razz Andy. We should have razzed him. That was like Harry, that was a Harry Sinden move, announcing the news on at the end of a football Friday.
So you're calling for spring in like 4 months, Matt? Do I have that limit?
I don't know. I'm doing my quick. Well, when they start baseball, it's I guess 3 months.
Maybe you're thinking of February
6 months.
spring training. Yeah. There we go.
6 months it is really.
Yeah. All right, gentlemen. Anything else to share with us that this week I hear on the podcast?
I just want to mention that somebody that was influential in both Beverly and communities of Hamilton and Wenham, Bill Foley. Most people knew him as Buzz. He passed away last week. We'll have something. Nick Giannino is working on a story for tomorrow's paper on Buzz, but Buzz started the Beverly High soccer program back in 1974. He was there. I think he coached the team for the first 8 or 9 years of the program. He went on to become assistant principal at the Memorial Middle School in Beverly. Then was a principal at Centerville Elementary School in Beverly. He became a reserve officer over in Wenham. He was a great athlete at Beverly High School. Went to Cushing, Salem State. He coached several hockey teams in Beverly and Hamilton, Wenham, and even Gloucester, I know. And then he went on to broadcast games locally with our buddy Pete Kelly later on. So he was a good guy. A lot of people knew Buzz heavily involved in sports, real community guy, and to go at 70 years old is far too young. So Godspeed, Buzzer. Hope you're doing well, and you will certainly be missed.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Very good soccer coach. That's for sure. Very energetic. Yep. Um,
Yeah, I've heard a lot of
Very-
stories about Beverly had to go on the road one year in I want to say 77, 78. They had to go on the road to somewhere down the South Shore area to play Salem in a playoff game. And they won the game in the rain. They came home. It was like a big joyous celebration, to beat Salem. So that was just, I think, one of the defining memories of his coaching career.
Probably he went up against the legendary John Oconee, coach at Salem High
You know
School
what?
boys soccer.
That's a great. I didn't even think about that, but you're probably right. Of course, I think of John from his time at St. John's Prep, and even
Yeah.
Lynn English before that, right? But he was at Salem all those years.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe English after Salem, though, right? Wasn't he? Wasn't that how it worked? Or
Yeah. Salem English, and then the Prep.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
I forgot. I actually forgot about the Prep. Yeah. Okay. Right. Okay. Cool. All right, gentlemen. Good stuff. A lot of names going back a few years. But we'll talk again soon.
All right.
Great,
Thanks,
thanks,
Bill.
Bill.